Happy Thursday, everybody. It's Kevin McPherson. It's HogvilleNET YouTube Live, and it is the first day of the 4-day, second consecutive week that you have a 4-day live evaluation period for Division One coaches hitting the shoe circuits, the various shoe circuits. But it's not only the second one in the last week or spanning the last 2 weeks. It's also the final live period, not just for July, but for the shoe circuit. So you had one in May. You had a lot of scholastic stuff going on in camps in June. Some of that was live eval. A good part of it was. And then July, you had the first session, which was last week, 4 days, and another 4 days beginning today through Sunday. And so once again, Arkansas Razorbacks men's basketball program will have its coaching staff led by John Calipari, the GOAT in recruiting. So this is his time of year. We know high school recruiting is still the forte. Yes, retention matters. Yes, he'll dip a little into the portal, but it's still about the studs out of the high school level. And so this is as important a weekend as any. It's not just about evaluation at this point. This is the stage where you get through this final live session, and there'll be some other events sporadically that some players will hit, but what you'll really start to see emerge are visit dates start to drop on multiple players. Some have already come out, one recently, very specific to Arkansas, some more about to pop. But a lot of that stuff, some of that might even emerge over the weekend. Certainly will start to emerge after the weekend in the coming days. And so we're not only watching what players do right now, but we're paying attention to everything. But once again, thank you for joining me here. We're going to go through a lot. Class of 2026, mostly. That's the main focus. Obviously, that's your next recruiting cycle or the current one. As you move past the roster build, we'll see if Arkansas finishes that last spot. We're going to talk some 27 names. Some we've already talked about at different times. We're going to put more names in one spot at one time than we have before because Arkansas has already started making offers, had some players out of that class on visits on campus already unofficially, and some things. And then we'll bring up several names there. And then a couple of 2028 prospects that are from the state of Arkansas with a little bit of maybe some intel there for you on that. One thing, just one housekeeping note, real quick. We've been talking about non-conference schedule lately, and two of the games that were reported by Rocco Miller, a Division I kind of scheduling guru, two of the games that we recently heard about mid-majors, he reported Arkansas is going to host Southern out of the SWAC on November 3rd. That would be the season opener in the regular season. And he also mentioned even more recently, he reported a game on December 16th against Mount St. Mary's out of the Metro Athletic, the MAAC. I've already forgotten the second A, but he had reported the Mount St. Mary's game, also Bud Walton Arena, for December 16th, which would be a midweek game. And it was reported yesterday, a report came out in the evening yesterday on Wednesday that game appears to be off. So I checked with Rocco this morning and said, hey, this is your reporting. You know, I never had a secondary confirmation of that game or the Southern game that you reported, but I'm hearing that, Mount St. Mary's may be off. And he confirmed that for me. Rocco said, yeah. He said, I had it on authority from not one, not two, but three different coaches. So he said three different coaches, I guess, involved with either or both teams had acknowledged for him that game was going to happen. And apparently they couldn't get the contract finalized. Those things happen. So it looks like now the Mount St. Mary's game's off the table. A couple of days ago when we were on after Calipari was in Little Rock, and I personally asked him about the Baylor game to kind of put that to bed. We'd been speculating for a while that was probably not going to happen this year. And he said, yeah, that's not going to happen. So those are now two games that we've heard are not going to happen. So we're down to the earliest known game. And we always said we're the one that brought the original reporting that Arkansas was going to host UCA back at Bud Walton Arena this year on November 11th, but that the contracts weren't finalized. I've heard nothing to say that game is in jeopardy, but I've not been told either that the final contract was finalized and signed. Those were the same disclaimers we gave last year when we reported Little Rock, Maryland Eastern Shore, and the Troy games. We were the first to report those non-conference matchups, and those played out, but I gave the disclaimer. So it's still the same disclaimer with UCA, especially given a couple that have fallen out now that went public. But UCA And so that's the first one that I have confirmed with more than one source. Southern looks like it's still in play as the actual season opener November 3rd, unless we hear otherwise on that one. And then Calipari's talked ad nauseum about the high major opponents that Arkansas has on the schedule. When you start talking about the road game at Michigan State, still waiting on a date for that. And then dates November 27th against Duke and Chicago, December 3rd at home against Louisville in the ACC SEC Challenge, the third year of that. December 13th against Houston and Dallas, and December 20th against, or excuse me, I knew I'd screw that up. December 13th against Texas Tech in Dallas, December 20th against Houston and Brooklyn at New York City at the Barclays Center. Okay, so that's just a little cleanup on aisle two for scheduling. We're almost 6 minutes in. Thanks for being here with us. All right, let's jump into this. Last week was a little bit easier, the 4-day live eval for Arkansas's coaches to travel. You had the staff split up mostly between Nike, EYBL, and Adidas, and that's because those are the top two circuits in terms of the top level players they produce. Nike has the most, Adidas second most. And then it was also interesting because both of those events were played in South Carolina. North Augusta, South Carolina, where this week's Peach Jam tournament and the Peach Invitational tournaments in that Augusta, Georgia, North Augusta, South Carolina, in that same location. But Adidas is not playing in South Carolina this weekend. Adidas is on the left coast playing its event this weekend. It had its championships last weekend, playing a different event for its circuit members. It's an invitational, so there'll probably be some strays that are allowed into that. But that's out in California. You've got the Under Armour Association playing its finals, its championship circuit event over these next 4 days, and that'll be in Chicago. You've got the Puma Next 16 event playing in Bryan, College Station, Texas, and its championships down there. And then you have several Made Hoops events, which is relevant for Arkansas's recruiting right now, and I'll explain that again. So it's spread out all over the place. That means Arkansas is going to clock some clicks on the old odometer, if you will. And of course, they're flying to these destinations, but you know where I'm going with that. So let's jump into it. We know who the priorities are. I ranked them the other day. We were on and I ranked really the 2026 guys. It starts with J.J. Andrews. Yes, he's committed, but yes, Calipari and Arkansas staff by one form or another will be courtside for every game he plays in now that the live eval starts back up today. And, you know, that'll be a thing. J.J. with a big game yesterday for Brad Bill Elite in a win. I believe he had 22 points, 6 rebounds, and 4 steals. Another outstanding performance for him. Right behind him, I've listed in some order. I put him as a tie this last time. The second, tied for the second biggest priority on your list after JJ. Guys like the number one player in that class, 6'7" wing Tyron Stokes. Visits already. We know this. Louisville last year, Kansas back in May, Kentucky back in June. He has stated he wants to visit Arkansas. He's been on the record saying maybe a couple of West Coast teams like Oregon and Gonzaga. So we'll see if that Arkansas visit materializes, but that's one we're keeping an eye on. Some announcement maybe soon, and see if where Arkansas really stands with him. Jordan Smith Jr. Is it down to Arkansas and Duke? Others, some say Georgetown's right there. We've reported that, and I've given you various sources on the 6'2" guard out of Virginia. Stokes, the number one player in the country. Some services have Jordan Smith Jr. as high as the second best player in that class. We've talked just glowingly about his blue collar and his athleticism, his length, his just gritty determination as a competitor on every play, let alone stretches of games. When this dude's locked in, he impacts winning. Put he and J.J. Andrews together, and these are guys it's going to be hard to take off the court as true freshmen. They're just going to be plug and play day one guys you roll with. No, zero doubt about that. But okay, so those are 3 right there that are on that Nike EYBL circuit. Playing at Peach Jam, again, that's in North Augusta, South Carolina. Now, I've covered Peach Jam before in the past. And what happens is the teams that don't make the cut for the higher level play in the Peach Invitational. And that's played in the facility that's actually in Augusta, Georgia. Augusta, Georgia, North Augusta, South Carolina. Think of it as Little Rock, North Little Rock. Similar kind of thing. It's just basically the same place, just different names there. Texarkana, Arkansas, Texarkana, Texas. We could do this all day. We don't need to. So you get the idea. But those three, Brandon McCoy Jr., remember, things got quiet with him. He didn't play in the spring dealing with injuries on any of the three Nike circuits. Plays with AZ Unity 17U out of Arizona. He's a California guy, St. John Bosco in Los Angeles. The 6'4", 6'5" ish combo guard who really made his first appearance at the FIBA U19 World Cup a couple of weeks ago. Then he's been playing. He played in the last live eval session on the Nike EYBL session 4 at the same location. But remember my reporting at FIBA U19 World Cup. It was him, it was Stokes, it was Jordan Smith Jr., Caleb Holt, who we're going to talk about later. Those were the four class of 2026 guys. And the staff told me then all four remain priorities. All four remain significant targets for what they're trying to do in 2026. Doesn't mean they're expecting to get all four, but you have to cast a wide enough net to drill down to the 3 or 4 you are going to get. Remember, J.J. Andrews off the board already. You continue to be courtside for him as a priority, but he's committed. So now maybe 3 more. But those 4 names at a World Cup playing on that 19U are ones that Arkansas is still focused on. So if you thought things were quiet with Brandon McCoy Jr. and there hasn't been specific talk of a visit, things like that, we know Arkansas staff's drilled down on him. That's why we continue to talk about him. Had a big 38-point game, 8 rebounds the other night, and was knocking down his fair share of triples in that game. It was he really kind of stole the headlines a couple of days ago with that performance. And, again, he's a guy that, he's a prolific slasher, versatile defender. One of those guys that just kind of makes, can turn an ugly play into something beautiful in the similar vein sometimes to Jordan Smith Jr. But, another player that we've talked about kind of outside as I drill down the top 6 at Arkansas's. When you start talking about visits or players that are lining up visits or talking about visits, you got to put them a little bit ahead of the pecking order, not just based on your needs, but because if they're at the level where they're saying, I'm going to visit Arkansas or plan to, or you start seeing these come out, which we have now, then you've got them in a certain tier. And I had McCoy with about a handful of other players I mentioned outside that top 6. I didn't rank that next group of 5, but McCoy was one of those, as is Christian Collins, the 6'8" combo 4 that also plays on Nike YBL. There looked like there was real momentum when I reported back after interviewing him at Nike EYBL in Memphis. He told me in that interview, and I tweeted that interview out at the time, that he had just picked up an offer from Calipari and was looking to visit Arkansas maybe in the fall. Excuse me. And Arkansas was courtside to see him in the last session, but this is a matter of it seems like there's less momentum with Arkansas with him right now. We've talked about that because we know that Arkansas, because the staff told me, they are also locked in on Mika Mirinen, a similar positional value. Maybe Mirinen's more of a, for the pro level, he's certainly a 3-4 kind of combo. I think that's probably what he'd be in college. You may make a case for a 4-5, whereas Collins is more of a 3-4. But Mika Mirinen, who's not on the Nike EYBL circuit this year, we've said that, didn't play in the spring, not playing now, hasn't been a part of it. Teammates last year with J.J. Andrews on that Brad Bill Elite championship run in the E16 version of the Peach Jam. Now it's the 17U level, but Mirinen's not here. But he's one of those guys I've had ranked. And so even though we don't have, and he visited Arkansas last September. So even though we're not going to have updates on him in terms of what's going on during live eval, we're paying real close attention since he recently cut his list down to 7, and Arkansas is in there. And I know the staff is locked in on him as a 26 prospect, not looking at him any longer as a reclass potential. Maybe some of the teams on his list are, but there a lot of teams were, I was told, backing off from him as a 25 prospect, maybe still hanging in there for 26. And apparently Arkansas is one of those because the staff has acknowledged that fact. So we're keeping an eye on these developments. So we went through some of the top names to look for. 3 that I have ranked in the top 6 in terms of priorities now because they've expressed desires to visit. Of course, J.J. Andrews already committed and had his visit. And then a guy like Jalen Montanati, also on Nike EYBL with Mo Can Elite. Arkansas has continued to be courtside for just about everything he's done. whether it was MBPA Top 100 camp, the staff was already there looking at JJ and other prospects, but the Scholastic event in Kansas City. Calipari was courtside to watch him again in June. The staff has seen him play in the last live eval session last week. So 6'7" wing out of Owasso, a sharpshooter, a sniper. And he was one of the 5 names outside the top 6 I ranked as far as priorities the other day, as still a priority, just not, he's been on campus for unofficial visits, just no real talk lately of when an official visit might be lined up. So I've got a few guys that Arkansas is really focused on, maybe not as much as others where you're hearing visits, but right there. And they're also, I consider priority recruits. It's just levels of priority. Some 1, maybe some 1A, but they're right there. And, Montnati ranked 24th in the composite rankings, a 5-star. Let's switch gears now. We mentioned EYBL, where it's located. We told you that Adidas 3SSB has been recruiting multiple players on that event, on that circuit. And again, 3SSB is playing out in LA. We'll see if their top tier guys are going to hit this event, because a guy like Caleb Holt, who led his team game 17U game elite to the Adidas championship last weekend, Arkansas coaches, including Calipari, were courtside to see him play last week. But Caleb Holt, top 10 rated 5-star. McCoy, top 3, top 4 rated 5-star. We mentioned JSJ, Jordan Smith Jr. and Stokes, 1 and 2. But Holt's a top 5 rated 5-star, 6'4", 6'5" guard out of the Atlanta area. Going to play at Prolific Prep, which has moved from the West Coast out into Florida for the upcoming season. That's interesting. So he won't be far from home, although transferring schools nonetheless. From Grayson High School. But Caleb Holt, a combo guard that has told me that he'd like Calipari to kind of resume the talks about getting him for a visit. That was back in May. We're a couple of months since then. We're not ruling Arkansas out. He's one of those names I mentioned on the outside of that top 6. Because remember, he was playing in World Cup, and the staff told me they're still prioritizing him and still in it to win it for him. So we'll see if Caleb Holt's performing this weekend for Adidas. Tay Kenny, the top 20 rated 5-star guard out of the state of Kentucky, plays at Overtime Elite. We've spoken ad nauseum about him in recent days. And he has planned a visit. He has announced a set visit for Arkansas for September 26th to the 28th. It's Notre Dame football Hogs game weekend. He'll attend basketball practice, then go to that game. Overtime Elite, we know Calipari's track record recruiting that. We know that he's been on this player for the longest time because he's a Kentucky kid, and Calipari was there for so long, obviously, before coming to Arkansas just last year. So it's a player that they've been on for a while, Calipari and the staff. And we know how serious they are about lead guards, and that's what Kenny is, 6'2", versatile guy, really good facilitator, great court awareness, but also has got a nice little bag in terms of creating shots. So he's also on the Adidas circuit, Wildcat Select 17U. One name that we have talked about more recently, Abdou Toure. We've talked about him all the time. We featured him a little bit more yesterday, the 6'6" wing out of Notre Dame High School in Connecticut. We've talked about him going back to last year when he got an offer from Arkansas in August, performed so well just prior to that in that Under Armour Elite 24 All-Star game. And the fact that, he came on that unofficial visit to Arkansas in October. The staff has prioritized him at every turn. They've been courtside for just about every one of his games, including Calipari last week. When you look at May, June Scholastic stuff, the MBPA Top 100 camp, he was teammates with J.J. Andrews in that event. And then, again, now Arkansas will have eyes on him again playing on the Adidas circuit. So 3 names there on players Arkansas has prioritized. Kenny and Holt, and Toure. Kenny, obviously, I had him in that top 6 priority list because a visit is scheduled. And then I had Holt and Toure just outside of that, named with guys like Collins, McCoy, and Montnati as that next group. Not that they're not it's not that they're like you're settling if you add one of those guys or bring him in for a visit. They're all 5-star guys. They're all top 25 rated 5-star guys. To some degree, you could make the case, well, are they really as much of a priority as a guy like Tyron Stokes or Jordan Smith Jr. if you could get those two? And the answer to that question is no, they're not. But they're the talent level. I mean, it's not like you're settling for what a lot of schools' plan Bs are, guys that are 3-star guys or lower level 4-star guys. At Arkansas, you're talking mostly top shelf guys on the players that you're going to see game in and game out in your courtside form. So it's why we bring the names up and make little distinctions. Erfan Diani, who we've talked so much about going back to May, even before that, but really drilled down on him and getting a lot of good intel from his camp. He has been on the Adidas circuit. And the reason we're not talking about him with Adidas this weekend is because his guardian, I mentioned yesterday when we were on, has told me he will not be on Adidas this weekend. He is shifting over to the lower tier Made Hoops, and he will be Made Hoops has several events this weekend. One of their events is in Augusta, Georgia. So, any of Arkansas staff members that stick around that area, anytime they spend there for Nike EYBL, as long as Diane didn't make another U-turn and decide to go back and play at Adidas this week, this is information I got a couple of days ago. If in fact he sticks with the Made Hoops event in Orlando, that's one of them, or excuse me, not Orlando, in Augusta, Georgia, then Arkansas staff, any staff members that are there for Nike EYBL, will easily be able to cross the street and go see him play. Another top 15 ranked according to 247 Sports, the number one center, who's told me he'll visit Arkansas in September. His guardian told me a couple of days ago with some of the intel we shared on one of these that he's drilling down on a visit date to Arkansas that could end up being that lone September date that Tate Kenny's going, where you have a home football game. That's Notre Dame again. Maybe the August 30th home date against one of the Alabama directionals in the season opener that's at Reynolds Razorback Stadium. Or I guess it could end up being a later date because he did say they were setting up multiple visits in September and October. So I guess in effect, if they can't get it worked out for one of those earlier dates, maybe it would slide out. But look, here's the thing: he just announced his offer from Kentucky, and so that was yesterday. So I mean, he's got offers from UConn, who's prioritized him, a lot of other schools. He'll be supposed to be playing in the Made Hoops event in Augusta, Georgia, a little bit different this weekend. All right, Jacob Lanier, the in-state 2026 player, Under Armour Association, they're having their finals again. That's being played in Chicago. Chin Coleman's a Chicago guy. Let's see if Arkansas staff goes over to Under Armour and gets courtside for any of Jacob Lanier's any of his games. We're keeping an eye on that. A couple of interesting developments on another in-state kid, or an in-state kid, the team he plays on, Aiden Chronister. Both Lanier and Chronister 2026, 6'7" wing, both of those guys played at independent schools last year out of the state. They're both back in state now. Lanier at Little Rock Parkview, Chronister back in Northwest Arkansas. He was originally played at Rogers, then Sunrise Christian Academy in Wichita, Kansas, now back to Northwest Arkansas. But he's in the Fayetteville area playing at a smaller, it's not even a AAA school, but it's like I don't know, but it's called The New School. That's the name of it, The New School. And he'll be playing there this upcoming season. But Chronister plays in the Arkansas-based, and that's Northwest Arkansas-based, actually, AAO Flight 17U on the Puma Next Pro 16 circuit. Yeah, Cal's going to help 25 to 30 families. Yeah, he's still got a ways to go. But he plays for AAO Flight on that circuit. They're playing again in College Station / Bryan, Texas this weekend for their championships. But a couple of Chronister's teammates are a couple of kids out of the Dallas area that I've been tweeting about recently because I've kind of been eyeballing their progress. Gavin and Gallagher Placide, I guess that's how I pronounce it, Placide. Gavin's the higher rated of the two, 6'10-ish, kind of a combo forward at 6'9", 6'10", ranked top 30-ish in that 2026 class. His brother Gallagher, about 6'8", little shorter, also a versatile guy though, maybe the better ball handler of the two, but kind of ranked in the top, from 75 to 100 range, a 4-star, both of them 4-star guys. And I've been, kind of reporting on them for the last several weeks. Well, Kansas jumped up and offered both of these players. So I'm interested to see, does Arkansas send anybody down just to take a look at, again, at Chronister and these two other guys that are kind of starting to really gain some momentum in recruiting on that Puma circuit. They've actually been adding year after year now as they get bigger and better. They're kind of getting closer to the big brothers, the big three. Nike, they're not getting close to Nike. They're not really getting close to Adidas, but they're more comparable now to Under Armour, which has kind of been third in the pecking order. Look out for Puma Next Pro, but look at some of these guys maybe. Let's see if Arkansas decides to check out some of that. All right, let's focus a little bit now as we're over 25 minutes in. That's class of 2026. Those have been the main names we've been talking about for a while. I keep checking back with the staff. Are there any surprises? And maybe sometimes there's one or two. They don't rule that out, but they're really focused on the names that we keep going over. So you're getting it here pretty clearly what they're looking at, even though it's spread out at some point, all these names, and we're probably down now, probably to about 10 that end up in 26, landing on 4 with JJ Andrews already decided. So really only 3 more. But class of 27, business is picking up there. We know that Arkansas offered Tyrone Jamison, the 6'2" guard out of Calvary Baptist in Shreveport. He was on Arkansas's campus for an unofficial visit for that Lipscomb game, to season opener last year. Arkansas coaches called him after the stroke of midnight, June 15th. So last month, that was the first day for that class that coaches can make direct contact with players. Calipari was courtside, as was other staff members throughout, as he plays for the 16U level JL3 Elite at Nike EYBL. And so they attended his game. He and Chin Coleman, then Jamison confirmed with me, gave me a good quote about how Cal and Chin had talked to him. And then, he was looking forward to, after picking up that Arkansas offer last weekend, to have the chance to play for the best coach in the world. So we gave you those quotes already, but Arkansas will be courtside to see him again. But some of the other 2027 guys, the number 1 overall player, this will be the second consecutive year, and he has an Arkansas offer that Arkansas will make sure they're courtside to watch him play. So they were last year on Nike EYBL. Again, this year, Silver Springs, Maryland, plays for Team Durant. But it's Baba Aludotton, the 6'9" combo forward. Arkansas watched him play. Now, he plays up. Even though his age level is 17U in that class 27, he plays up on 17U Team Durant, not 16U. And Calipari and the staff got to watch him play when Team Durant played Team Takeover last weekend. I know they were courtside for that game because they were there to watch Jordan Smith Jr. So they got to see the number 1 player match up against JSJ in that game. Arkansas will be courtside again. He was one of the players on June 15th, right after midnight, that Arkansas reached out to and made direct contact with. As is CJ Rosser, ranked top 3 just about everywhere. When I was at Nike EYBL back in mid-May, we mostly talked about 2026 guys. I did put out highlights or video with a couple from 27. One of them was CJ Rosser, and I put the camera on Akeem Olajuwon because his son was playing in that game, was courtside, as was John Calipari, Chin Coleman. And we told you, look out for CJ Rosser, Mount Pleasant, North Carolina, or Mount Rocky, North Carolina. And he's, again, a 6'9" combo forward. Really got a nice stroke from 3, really active defensively on the glass, runs the court really well. I really like CJ Rosser. He's a player that, when Arkansas reached out to him after midnight on June 15th, Calipari extended an offer. So he picked up his Arkansas offer on June 15th. Remember, it was a month before when Calipari and Coleman were courtside, and I was there videoing them, watching him play. And we talked about CJ Rosser a little bit at that time. Even though 26 is kind of your top priority right now, obviously, 27, this is your last chance to see these guys at this level. And now that's your next recruiting cycle. So I think Arkansas probably have a more intense look at some of these guys, maybe more saturate some of these games more with a staff presence. They probably did some of that last weekend. They certainly will this weekend with some of these guys. But those are 3 right there. Some of the other names that we haven't talked about for 27, because we've talked about all three of those prior, are guys like Bruce Branch III, a 6'7" wing out of Fort Lauderdale, Florida. He's really blown up in the spring and summer. The second-ranked player behind Alla Dotton. The third-ranked player, Marcus Spears Jr., a 6'8" forward out of Dynamic Prep in the Dallas area. He's the third-ranked player, as is Ryan Hampton, number 8, another top 10. They're both top 10. 6'6" wing guard Ryan Hampton, 6'8" Marcus Spears Jr. They both play for Dynamic Prep. And those are players to keep an eye on with Arkansas staff, watching some of these guys. Again, Bruce Branch III, Marcus Spears Jr., Ryan Hampton, all ranked in that top 10 in that 27 class. You've got two combo forwards or big wings in Branch and Spears. And then you've got Hampton, who's a big guard, and his older brother, R.J. Hampton, from that Dallas area. A lot of people are familiar with him. A couple of names are players that people may remember. Certainly they will with Beckham Black, because I get asked about this all the time. Anthony Black, Pro Hog's little brother, 6'3" now. He's now ranked top 20. You look at 247's composite rankings. He's inside the top 20 now. 19th ranked, a 5-star. 6'3" guard, been part of that Duncanville High School deal after his brother Anthony led that team to a state championship. But Beckham Black is transferred to Southeastern Prep in Orlando, Florida. Think about that. That's where Big Brother plays with the Orlando Magic in the NBA. So it's probably easier for the family, right, to be around for both young men as they continue on their basketball journeys. But Beckham Black's a guy, we'll see. He attended the Arkansas-Oklahoma game at Bud Walton Arena late January. And so we'll see if anything comes to this with Arkansas. I know for a fact that, he would like for Arkansas to recruit him, but we'll see if Calipari prioritizes him. Remember, he's a lead guard. Some people think he is the best true point guard in that class. Ranked higher, though, is Tyrone Jamison out of the Shreveport area, who also, again, was at the Lipscomb game, and Arkansas is definitely prioritizing him. He's courtside for his games. They just extended an offer. Beckham Black playing with his brother's AB Elite program in the Nike setup at the 16U level. Let's see if Arkansas's coaching staff, we'll see if we can find out if Arkansas's coaching staff is courtside to watch him this weekend. He's got a teammate who's ranked 5th in the class 2027, will have a teammate at Sunrise Prep in a 7-footer, Abena Ikizi. Again, a 7-foot, 5-star, ranked 5th in the country in that class. So Beckham Black will have a guy that he can lob the ball to and get the ball to. That'll be exciting to watch that develop in this next high school season. But let's see if Arkansas shows any love and gets courtside to watch Beckham Black this weekend. Another name in the 27 class, ranked in the top 30, as Devin Cleveland, a 6'2" guard out of La Lemire in Indiana. He took an unofficial visit to Arkansas last year. He was on campus the same weekend that Abdou Toure was on campus. That was in October. I think it was the LSU game that Arkansas hosted. And it was the same weekend that Chris Sinak, who's now at Houston, be a freshman there. Hogs will match up with him. It was a big visit weekend, and all three of those guys were there. But Devin Cleveland, it's been kind of quiet at 6'3", and he's also kind of a lead guard. You can maybe call him a combo guard. But again, Arkansas, Calipari with that focus on Jamison, Tyrone Jamison with this recent offer, does that mean he just focuses on one guy? He's kind of zeroed in on his lead guards in the past, and we'll see, does he focus on that one guy? Or again, do guys like Beckham Black and Devin Cleveland come into the picture? All right, we're going to sign off here very shortly, not quite 35 minutes in. Just going to throw a couple of names from the 2028 class. We've talked about these young men. They're both from Arkansas. Calipari was out to see the first guy I'm going to mention back in June at the team camp in Kansas City. Anthony Spratt Jr., 6'5", pushing 6'6", guard, wing, plays at Benton High School as a freshman last year. Helped Benton win the school's first ever state title in basketball, 5A state title, no less. So the second highest classification. But Calipari was out and see him in June. He plays for Bradville Elite on the 15U level. Again, he's a 2028 kid. Will be a sophomore next year in high school. Another name on the same team that I've covered and talked about, Elijah Bryant at North Little Rock, was one of the rare starters as a true freshman in ninth grader last year at North Little Rock High School, playing on the biggest stage, the 6A. Starter there, but also on that same 15U Brad Bill elite team. We know Brad Bill has been stealing the top level talent from Arkansas for its spring and summer, going back to Moses, guys like Moses Moody, Nick Smith Jr., Layden Blocker, just to name three that end up being Razorbacks, and now J.J. Andrews, who's committed. Keep an eye on both of these 15 and under guys, but Arkansas will be courtside. I'm told, this is a little intel for you. I'm told Arkansas will be courtside for some of the 15U action to check out these in-state kids. So whether it's Calipari that makes a full appearance or someone on the staff, I'm told to look for that. So we'll be paying attention to that and try to confirm that later once it plays out. Remember, everything starts today. Some of these games might already be underway for some of the younger age groups. I know a little bit later here in a couple of hours, the 17U stuff and your higher priorities right now, because it's your next class, will be hitting the court for the first time in this live eval segment. Again, it's 4 days long. But man, that's just a lot of info. A lot of info on the names spanning several classes here as we jump into all of it. Once again, thank you for joining me on HogvilleNET YouTube Live. If you haven't done it already, please hit subscribe, like, and share. We appreciate that. We love bringing the content, obviously. We're going to have a lot more to talk about as we move through the weekend. My hope is not only talking about big performances and which coach was on what court and when from Arkansas staff to see players, but I'm hoping more information, drops on maybe some visit stuff, or maybe lists getting cut down, or you hear more about maybe someone's leaning somewhere and it involves Arkansas, because that stuff will start to come out again once the weekend's over. Typically, where most of that is once they finish playing, but every once in a while you get some nuggets as it's playing out on that, when the action's still going on. And so we're keeping an eye out, razor sharp on everything. But until next time, probably be tomorrow, probably be Friday. Thanks for being here. Take care of yourselves. We'll see you soon.